You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast if you are devouring our content on audio, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast if you are watching this new YouTube video where we will be diving into the comparisons, Ross, of various franchise leagues and how we do that. So before we get onto that, obviously a quick reminder, please do like and subscribe, and head over to Patreon. And did we want to bring this one in with one of our new reviews as well, Ross? Was that the plan?
That is a great thing to do, Max. And the bit for me is really understanding where people talk about farmer leagues, and I'm a big fan of the farmer mentality. Don't get me wrong, and not big pharma. We're not kind of super profiteering. We're talking about people who turn around and be like, "This is a joke." You're playing against a bunch of farmers, which I've always found a really weird way of talking about it. But let's get into one review from Jez Bags, instantly a good name. 5 stars, top class cricket podcast. Love the IPL mega auction review and looking forward to hearing future episodes when it starts. Been looking for a cricket podcast for a while that focuses on IPL, and this hits the spot. Jez Bags, thank you very much for that. We'll read out another one later on in the show. Where should we start then? So in terms of power rankings, when it comes to these kind of things, I don't want to kind of say who's bottom because we know who's bottom. But where can we?
I don't know. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure.
No. Okay, fine. So
we start off with this. Who's bottom?
Okay, so first of all, what league? First of all, let's have a run through of the leagues that we're comparing.
All right, if we rank the leagues, there we go. The segment now we've got all world leagues ranked. By the Cricket Podcast. Title done.
Number one is the North Sweden District League.
Shut up, Max.
Okay, so I think the main franchise leagues, you've got what? CPL, IPL, Pakistan Super League, Bangladesh Premier League, the Lankan Premier League.
BBL. Did you say BBL?
Yeah,
Blast.
Big Bash, the Blast. The 100 doesn't get into there.
The 100, you've got to put the 100 in.
100's in. The Mzansi Super League.
Well, they haven't played that for like 2 years.
Still a league.
Well, I think top 8. They're your top 8, aren't they?
Yeah, top 8.
Regular T20 leagues.
Yeah.
Right, Ross,
plus 100.
You seem like the person with the most notes here. So do you want to set out your criteria for judging leagues so we can shoot you down?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
You're like the first wave into the attack. And we're the machine guns.
So in my head, the way in which you assess these leagues is strength of domestic talent, quality and number of overseas, plus facilities is kind of what I'm going at in terms of like the quality of actually what you're looking at in terms of pitches that you play on. Like if you play on a shit tip in, I don't know, say the Sri Lankan Premier League, and you're just like, what is going on here? Actually, compared that to say playing in say in the Blast, actually there's a massive change in standard, right? So it's a leveler. That's how I'm in my head what I'm looking at. Domestic talent pool, quality of overseas, the actual conditions you're playing in.
Okay, so with that in mind, what did you say was last?
I think the Sri Lankan is last.
I thought you were going to go. I thought you were going to go for T20 Blast because normally this conversation.
That's why I thought I'd take it up. Them.
That's what. Normally this conversation goes. Well, everyone knows the T20 Blast is the worst league in the world. Now, I disagree with that. You probably make some good points there around the Sri Lankan Premier League or the Lanka, whatever LPL. But it is normally people have a go at the Blast because they say there's too many teams. A lot of those teams aren't set up for T20 cricket. There's too many domestic players. The overseas players aren't good enough, and there's only 2 of them per side, and about 5 other things that are thrown in its direction. Now, I'd contest some of those points, but that's the cricket hipster point of view in a really brief nutshell.
Yeah, I just quite like the Blast. Don't know why. Maybe that is
because you can go down and get pissed on a Friday night and watch some cricket, Ross. That's why I like the Blast.
I think it's important to make the point about the Sri Lankan League. I think they had one of the teams had an overseas player from the Cayman Islands, which is possibly the cricket equivalent of Ali Dia, And if almost like they have to be ranked bottom by default, just purely
It's
for that
always
reason.
good when Ali Dia gets a mention, isn't it?
So we're saying they're eighth. Can I throw in potentially a controversial nomination for seventh? You don't have to take this. Big Bash.
It's down there.
Yeah, I think
This year,
I think
especially.
people talk it up. People talk it up, but it is full of people that are not actually professional cricketers
Well, you had like a pool of players who could like play for multiple teams. I mean, I know that COVID was an issue, but like, yeah, it's not ringing endorsement of the standard, is it?
Well, if you're going to play it at the same time that the Ashes is on, it tells you how much gravitas it has in your cricket domestic calendar.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's how there's more teams in the Big Bash than there are actual states that play professional cricket in Australia. So that's already going to be a problem. If you're looking at like the domestic strength there, Ross, to use your matrix, that's a heinous situation. Then you take out all of the good players so that they can go and play for Australia, and you're left with an even worse bunch of players. Yeah. When CricViz did this ranking, the blast. If they called it the Big Blast,
maybe they should merge.
Pay attention, yeah. They ranked the Blast bottom based on those things, but I honestly don't think they're taking into account the fact that a lot of the players that are playing in the Big Bash are not full-time cricketers.
So they don't have the stats to bring the averages down.
Yeah, it's all right. You see some of the players that go over there and just make hay. I mean, it's like nobody can stop them. They're like a god amongst men. There's other players barely hit it off the square, and Laurie Evans is just going into the top deck, full after ball.
Any like randomly, any like reasonably decent overseas spinner just like runs through teams because there's like three Aussies who are good at playing spin in the whole league. I'm not a buyer of the Big Bash. People rate the Big Bash high, but they're thinking of the Big Bash like 5-6 years ago. It's not like that at all now. And every team by the end of the tournament, every team's got like 3 great cricketers playing in it. It's like it's poor, and the overseas recruitment and list management is utterly shambolic. Like there's no clue whatsoever. Honestly, I'm so strong on this. Like there's good players available who are like who would be able to go for the whole comp, but no, they pick like some random guy who's clearly only going to be there for 4 games, and then they don't know what to do to replace him. And then you have like Melbourne Renegades recruiting a Chand who like doesn't even strike at 130 in America. So like, yeah, I think it could be a good league if you did a lot of changes. If you
made it completely different.
If you had no clash Australian international summer with all the internationals playing, and you had 4 overseas per team, and you had a draft, that would be a really good league. But until they make those changes, it won't be.
Well, they're talking about expanding the league, aren't they? They're talking about expanding that league.
That's a disaster because then they're diluting the domestic cricket, the domestic talent even further. So maybe there's going to be 4 great cricketers per team rather than 3.
It could be a good feeder system. Yeah. We should give them credit though for being pioneers of T20 cricket, shouldn't we? I mean, we all love how the X Factor sub and the whatever.
I like the new rules.
What else they've got?
I don't know the rules. But they haven't got.
Is it Power Bottom? Is that what they have? Power Surge.
Power Surge.
But the teams don't even have a clue about that. Like I've run some numbers on this, and the winning of the Power Surge is actually a really good. If you're chasing it, it's a really good predictor of who wins the game, right? And yeah, teams are like, nah, don't want this bonus point. What do I want 25% of the total points in the match for? I will just block out the last over and we need 5 for the Power Surge point. Yeah. And they haven't got their head around that at all.
It's because they don't take T20 cricket seriously and they still win the fucking World Cup, don't they? So
next league. Who hasn't nominated a league? Ross, you went in first. I went. Max?
Yes, me next, isn't it? So what it's got to be, I think at this
point,
it's got to be between the Blast and the BPL, haven't we?
Oh, well, make your case.
I'm going Blast. I'm going in Blast.
Ooh.
Yeah.
all of our English listeners writing like an email
Well,
to
I
us.
just think for me, it comes back to that 2 overseas slot issue.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's the kicker for me, I think.
Not all the terrible Bangladeshi players, though. You're happy
No.
to overlook
No.
that.
No, well, that basically the
8
terrible,
of the 11 players are awful.
The terrible Bangladeshi players offsets the fact that we have to play 2 extra English players. That's
Even our most staunch Bangladeshi fans on here has been like, not sure I think Max is smoking something.
And if we look at these rankings, or when we finally process these rankings of these 8 leagues, we're going to find that there's a pretty strong correlation between the amount of overseas players per team and the quality of the league.
I suppose, in fairness, I have forgotten Ross's third category, haven't I? Which involves facilities, and you don't get to play at Lords in the BPL, do you?
You don't get to play at Lords. You don't actually get to see it on the TV.
Moeen Ali apparently is another champion.
You don't really get to see the blast on the TV either, which is a bit
in
shit.
Bangladesh. You get a pitch where 130 is par.
Yeah, that's a problem for entertainment. The number of left arm spinners in Bangladesh is just weird. It's like Dutch football and left-footed players, except less sexy. And again, no offense, Bangladesh, but Holland is a sexy place. It is. Well, what do you want me to say?
Yeah,
Name a sexier country.
I've also forgotten how bad Bangladesh were at the World Cup. I'm telling myself I'm wrong.
There might be one less overseas player in each Blast team, but there is one more player that actually would be good in international cricket. That's English.
That's fair. When you consider also that, I mean, there's players who don't even get 100 contracts. There's batters who don't even get 100 contracts who are getting BPL teams as an overseas player because the hitting quality in Bangladesh is so poor.
Yeah.
Okay, so I vote Max is wrong.
I vote Max is wrong.
We're relegating the BPL to 6.
Yeah.
Dan, your turn. Who are you nominating as the 5th best league? I hope there's 5 leagues left.
So let me get this. IPL, PSL, CPL.
100 Blast.
100 Blast.
You can go T10 if you want, or we can just bump everyone down.
It is with a heavy heart that I'm going to go Blast at number 5. And it is primarily down to that 2 overseas scenario that Max talked about and the dilution of English talent. Now, again, it's a league that if you put another 1 or 2 overseas players per team, it would be unbelievably good. And you'd be pushing you'd be ahead of CPL for sure. So again, there wouldn't be many changes, but yeah, I think when you've got guys who hit 9, 10, 11, 12% boundaries in the Blast on basically roads with small boundaries, that's a problem, and that shows you that
some of the boundaries,
batters.
Some of the squares you play on in the Blast are stupid, aren't they?
Yeah, but there's also games where I mean, I don't really want to name players or teams, but there's been games at Leicester where we're in a position and I'm like, we can't lose this game because of who's to come or who's batting and who's to come because they just can't hit. Mm-hmm. But then most teams have got 3-4 good hitters as well.
Yeah. All right, it's back around to me then to build up the 4. 100's only had 1 season and it's already in the top 4, which is pretty good going if you think about it.
But it's starting from a good base, isn't it? You know, there is a point. I've actually got Freddie Wild's article up, and one of the things he talks about why the Blast is not a great league is because there are 162 domestic players required to fill each starting 11, whereas the most for any other league that we're talking about is 72 in the Big Bash. So it is a lot more players, but as we were saying, all those players are professional. A lot of them are quite focused on T20 cricket because you get paid loads of money if you play for England, and not everyone can get into the Test side. And the 100, it gets to pick from those 162 players. So it's distilling down a competition that we're all rating pretty highly here into an even more concentrated format with an extra overseas. So it's I think, Ross, we're right to have it in the top 4, basically. For sure. But carry on, make your point.
Well, I think it actually makes top 3, as I'll put the CPL in at 4.
There we go. What's your reasoning that it comes in below the 100, our 100 euro?
I think, again, just the pool of talent is actually available. Yes, we might see some of the best things, and we've talked about some of the best things about West Indies cricket on the previous part of this podcast, right? But I also think there's a lot that they don't have the infrastructure to support cricket as much as the other leagues do at this point in time. And I think that lack of investment does show when you start almost scratching down the surface. If you were to take, say, the depth charts, right? If you were to go below kind of level 3 on a depth chart for 100 team, you're fine, or you've run out of players. For a CPL team, you're picking a guy who actually probably isn't as good as the worst player in the 100, or is middling when it comes to kind of playing in the blast, right? Is probably my logic around that one.
Also, for me, I think one of the big things is the golfing class between sides in the same competition. I mean, you got in the CPL, what was it? Quite recently we had, was it Guyana who just lost every game? I can't remember.
No, Barbados.
Oh, yeah, I can't remember.
There is
how
usually
the
one,
but there's usually one. Yeah, also ran, and one team that absolutely smokes
St.
it.
Lucia did it for a while. They were bottom like a few years in a row.
Yeah, and then the Trimbago Knight Riders just cruising off into the distance
Yeah.
at the top of the table.
And them and Guyana were the best teams for a long time.
All right, Jack, who's coming in to start the top 3?
Right, now this is a genuine problem. I think you have to say the 100 is below the PSL. Yeah. But I would caveat that slightly, or I would predict that over the next 3 years, we could see, in terms of quality here, maybe not in terms of coverage and fanfare and how much it gets talked about on the circus, but I think you can see the 100 overtake the PSL pretty easily. We're talking about, and this has sort of been my theme of the whole thing, the domestic player pool and so on. We're concentrating that 162 down into what is 8 times 8 max 64. So you're taking the best 33% of the best T20 players in England, putting them in a tournament with a load of overseas players, and they're the good overseas players because England's an attractive place to play cricket. They come from all around the world except India. So you've got this high concentration of domestic talent with a high concentration of overseas talent that isn't really replicated anywhere except, I think, in the IPL, where obviously you have the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy played at a lower level. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a lower level of T20 cricket in Pakistan. Of course there isn't. But if you're looking at who is working on their skills day in, day out, and how many, players there are with aspirations who are full-time working on their aspiration to break into the elite competition, the 100 will have that, and I don't think the PSL will, because they don't have as many domestic players who are professional at Syed Mushtaq Ali level or blast level. And actually, you know what? A tournament we've probably missed out this, and it's because we really, you don't hear too much about it because we see India and we see IPL. So I'd actually the SMAT, I'm going to call it the SMAT. That's what everyone in the know calls it. The SMAT probably has a claim to be in the top 8 tournaments here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We've ruled it out, but it's not. The best teams in that tournament, was it Karnataka and the other one in the Tamil Nadu in the final. They have players. They would beat teams in the Bangladesh Premier League, I think.
They would beat teams in the Big Bash as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to say the 100 is third, but I would not be surprised at all if we look back in a year's time and we look at the quality of what happens this summer and think that actually might be better than the PSL. I rest my case.
You get to decide.
Oh no! I want to take it up with Jack first. I'm not sold on that.
No.
Yeah, well, go on. No. Yeah.
I think you make it's very, very fair. I kind of have them. I think the 100. Oh, I want to say
you haven't seen the 100 in its full glory. I don't think we can say that the version of the 100 we have seen is better than this year's Pakistani
I'm going to rank them equal second. I want to rank them equal second. Well, because you've got...
I don't know if we can have this. We're going to have a vote.
But I want to say why.
Okay.
I think that the English domestic batters are far better than the Pakistan domestic batters as a general group. But the Pakistan pace bowlers are far better than English domestic pace bowlers as a group. They kind of balance themselves out. If you're going to quibble about it, I don't mind what Jack says in terms of, because they've got one more overseas player per team, although most teams haven't used their full quota this year. I genuinely think, and I've said this before, and I genuinely mean this, if you have in the 100, if you increase the payments for the players by, say, 50%, your top bracket's almost 200 grand or whatever, yeah?
Mate, Agnew's head would blow up.
Oh, so be it.
Yeah, what a shame.
And you have
Which journalist is he going to call a C word when he's pissed? Sorry.
And you have 4 overseas per team, and maybe with 6 in your squad. And so you do that, I can guarantee you that's way higher than PSL and probably on a similar level to that.
Yeah, but Dan, what you've done this again.
That's not actually what the case is.
The
BBL could be really good if it were different to what it is right now.
As the tournament evolves, I genuinely think if you have 4 overseas players in 100, it will be as good as the IPL.
I can't have them equal because we've had 1 year of the 100 and it wasn't a proper year of the 100. Also, they made it stupid. They could have just had T20 cricket.
There's another problem with this, and it is that some of the England players will not be available for the 100, and that will be a thing for every year. I don't think that is, that's not what the PSL don't do that.
The PSL don't block up like key positions in franchise teams for people like Rory Burns.
That is true, but you also do have Babar Azam hitting 30 or 50 balls nearly every week, so
that is true.
bit of a trade-off. So okay, well, Dan, we're gonna have to make a decision. I think 100 goes into 3 because it doesn't have the history behind it yet.
The history.
We've added a fourth. We've added a fourth thing. Facilities and history.
India v Pakistan, which is best?
Well, it's got to be tied equal first, I think, for the PSL. Yeah, well, obviously the PSL has to come in second, doesn't it? We can't, with a good conscience, decide that it's better than the IPL. Even though it is really good, isn't it? I mean, we love the PSL. It's pretty exciting. Again, as Dan said, with the depth of fast bowling that they've got in Shaheen Afridi. Basically, any opportunity to watch Shaheen Afridi in a T20 tournament should be taken. And it's been good this year as well, hasn't it? It's been pretty. Unless your name is the Karachi Kings, it's been pretty competitive.
Yeah.
Just check out my PSL corner. We had the double middle finger, double birds.
Yeah, Ben Cutting versus what was his name?
Sahil Tanvir.
Yeah. I mean, the whole James Faulkner thing blew up big time, and
James Faulkner.
Yeah.
Can we have a little update on James Faulkner? Because the news had literally just broken when we recorded our pod on Saturday. So
I would love to give an update on this purely on the fact that I inadvertently got in the middle.
I'll tell you what. Yeah, go on, carry on.
I inadvertently got into the middle of India versus Pakistan on Twitter.
Yep.
Didn't mean to at all, and ended up right in the middle of the turmoil. So I can only apologise if that has ruined your Twitter timeline. But pretty much, James Faulkner came out and said that PSL hadn't been paying him. He's left the tournament. He's thrown his cricket kit into the chandelier of the hotel, and it was.
Well, that's going to make things worse, isn't it?
And this was
now he's down the loot and his cricket kit.
We had only, when we recorded the last podcast, we'd only heard about that part of the story, as it literally was just breaking at the time we were recording it. It was on Saturday morning. In the afternoon, the PR machines got whirring. You got everybody in Pakistan fully behind PSL, pretty much going, James Faulkner was drunk. He's an arsehole. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We've always been able to provide payment to everybody who's been there. We have a 70% upfront, 30% when the tournament's finished. James Faulkner was kind of asking us to do money laundering was one bit of it as well, kind of from different accounts. So everybody got absolutely involved. Plus, there was a conspiracy theory, which is amazing, that the IPL and the BCCI put James Faulkner up to this to embarrass the Pakistan Super League. As a small event goes and being blown out of all proportion, pretty fucking brilliant, I thought. So I think that's the update. Don't know who's actually telling the truth. don't really care who's telling the truth, as the story's brilliant either way.
Yeah.
All I want to know is, have they got the helmet out the chandelier yet?
That is a great question. They've got
not an easy job.
It's got to stay.
Yeah,
It's got
anyone
to
who's
stay
seen-
as a memory.
Anyone who's seen that episode of Only Fools and Horses will know the potential pitfalls
Rogue batting protection in
chandelier
Light fittings.
removal. Right, Dan, you get to talk about the IPL. I think to finish this segment off.
Yeah, the Pakistan Super League comes in second.
No comment, and that's the end.
This
of the
is
show.
how we got him.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's the biggest budget league in terms of the squad building. The only league with an auction, which so it's unique from that perspective. And I think as well, Ross, you talk a bit about the conditions and the arenas and stuff like that. You've got a packed house every single game, a fervent atmosphere. It's incredible. I was lucky enough to spend a couple of weeks in India, and the passion for cricket is unbelievable there. So for me, yeah, IPL all the way.
Well, there we have it. We've got a top 8 where we are starting with the Lanka Premier League in number 8. We've got the Big Bash at number 7. Number 6 comes the Bangladesh Premier League. Number 5 comes the T20 Blast. Number 4 is the Caribbean Premier League. Number 3 is the 100. Number 2 is Pakistan Super League. And number 1 is the Indian Premier League.
That is the official ranking.
Yeah.
So,
I think you could swap around Bangladesh Premier League and Big Bash.
I think
I'm not going to get into that again. No.
Yeah, not going. So
it's funny.
It's funny. Yeah. If you've got an opinion on that, please let us know in the comments and follow us up. Shall we quickly move on to England, as we've classically had Dan on the show and got carried away with talking about all kinds of different things.
Yes, but we need a break.
Okay, let's do that right now. We'll be back shortly.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.